Hey everyone, it's Mace1370. Today we are going to do an RTA showcase for the new Water Thief Peira. Before we get into it though, please make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Also, please see the video description below for a link to my Discord. All of my units are on the Discord, so if you want to see the stats for anything, they're all listed there. I will quickly show the stats for how I'm running Peira right now, and then we'll get into the RTA matches. So Peira is a new Water Thief. She has an incredibly high base speed. You can see that I've pretty much fully molded her here. I'm using her artifact for now. I haven't fully leveled it up. All it really does is increase effectiveness, so I just need to farm some more artifact charms, I guess. And, you know, I've seen people build her a couple different ways, really two ways. She's always fast when people build her, and they typically put some amount of bulk on her, and then it's just a question of whether or not you want to put crit chance on her, like with a crit chance neck, for example. I'm not using that, I'm just using, you know, random tank stats with effectiveness. And if you want to do the crit chance thing, you could, because her skill 2 is an AoE attack, and so that could boost CDOM if you want to have that synergy. I don't really draft CDOM right now, so I don't bother with a crit chance neck. I'd just rather have more tank stats. So a really quick overview of her abilities. Her skill 2 is typically what you're going to use first. This is going to be a 1 buff, duration decrease on the enemy team. So really nice for teams that run like FCC and that also have immunity. It'll get rid of the immunity, and it'll even leave barriers if you have an OpSig. So basically this is how Cerise worked, right? And then also restricts just like Cerise, but instead of slow, she puts down unable to be buffed for 2 turns, which is really strong. And then it gives her an extra turn on top of that. So I kind of feel like Peira is just a power crept version of Cerise. She even has a higher base speed, so she just kind of seems flat out better for most things. Her skill 3 is also completely bonkers. So this is a non-attack skill, so you have to be careful. This will trigger units like Politis, right? And this gives her a new type of buff called Escort, which is a 30% Aureus effect for your team. Also gives her a fat barrier, and this barrier is just a flat amount. It scales based on her level. When she's max level, I think it's a little over 10,000 health, so it'll absorb plenty of damage. You don't need to worry about building her, right, to take damage or anything like that. The barrier does the job. And it gives her stealth as well, and all of this for 3 turns, so pretty silly. And then her skill 1 is a stun, and when she has a barrier, it goes up even higher, so it's like a 65% chance, which is pretty high as far as stuns go. And then you can soul burn it to 100, you know, because why not? So here's her gear. It's basically just, you know, speed gear, and where possible, I get effectiveness and tank stats. So how am I going to draft her? I think you can look at drafting her in a couple ways. You can use her as a speed opener and cleave with her. You can also shift into a standard draft with her because of her Aureus effect. So she can take the spot of an opener and also provide Aureus for your team. And oh, did I mention she gives attack to everyone? Because, you know, of course. So she gives an Aureus to your team, she gives attack to your team, she can, you know, speed contest against cleave because she restricts. It puts buff block on them, so that can be really problematic for them. She has synergy with cleave units herself, like with Caesarea, or with Ida because she has a non-attack skill, so her use case scenario seems incredibly broad. So let's take a look at a few games and see how she plays out. Alrighty, first game here is against Pinar. So I'm still just going to pre-ban Bellion for now. That may change, you know, with a new unit, you know, the meta will shift, but hard to say exactly how it will before we do some testing, so I'm just going to keep pre-banning Bellion for the time being. The opponent takes Conquer Lilius, so, you know, this is one of like the big speed contests or speed openers that people are drafting. Obviously a very strong first pick, and I think we have another option to deal with her now with Peira. So I can take her, and then I can take Apocalypse Ravi, and then I can look to potentially shift into standard or shift into cleave, right? Because I have a speed opener that I can use to contest Lilius, and I have Apoc in case I want, you know, a backup unit for my cleave team. Also, Peira is really nice into Lilius because she can put unbuffable on the enemy team, and that's really nice because it prevents Vigor from being applied, which is one of the biggest strengths of Conquer Lilius, right? So he takes Politis and FCC. So it doesn't have a ton of DPS yet. I could take like Caesarea and then try to cleave or something, but I kind of already took Peira and I want to try shifting into standard just to see what that feels like. And so if we do that, I think Mediator Cowric is a pretty decent pick into Conquer Lilius. and then I could take a DPS, like maybe Steny, for example, or something like that. Because Bellion is pre-banned, so we can take Steny a little bit early. We don't have to worry about getting counterpicked. So I'll just take Steny. I think it's a safe like DPS option, I guess. And for this last spot, we can just take another DPS hero that, cancels something on the enemy team, essentially. So he takes Landy. Landy's good into Ricky for sure, right? Because Ricky's going to give buffs, and Landy will just eat your team alive. Then he takes Arby. I'm not really concerned about Arby because I have Spectre. I can Soulburn into him a couple times. And I have Peira, who can put buff block on him and prevent Gab and also give me Aureus, so I'm not really worried about Arby. I can take Milim here, and I think Milim is kind of a force ban for the opponent since he only has one speed threat, and that's Conquer Lilius. Now, I guess this is kind of a mind game at this point. I assume he's banning Milim. I think he kind of has to, because if I ban Conquer Lilius, then Milim would just completely hard counter his 2 DPS heroes, right? I debate about actually banning Conquer Lilius, but I think he's going to ban Milim. So it's, I guess, a bit of a coin flip in that regard, because if he bans my Peira and lets the Milim through, then Conquer Lilius will just potentially cause problems for Milim. Although I guess I have Ricky, and Ricky would, cleanse away any of the debuffs on the Milim, and I would presumably be able to, get a turn with the Milim after all. So went ahead and banned out the Landy. He banned the Milim. So now we can skill 2 here, and this is an attack skill, so this doesn't trigger Politis. This will put restrict and buff block on the enemy team. Also really good into FCC, right? It'll prevent her skill null and shields and stuff like that. And then we can skill 3. This will trigger Politis. I debated about not doing this, but I think it's worth it just to get the Aureus effect. I think it's fine. It doesn't really matter if we get crown stunned or anything like that because we have Ricky, right? And the restrict here is really nice because think about for a moment if we had Milim. Politis would still do her little thing with her S2 and potentially crown stun me, but she's not going to cut up, right? And that means that my Ricky and Milim will get the turn before her, which is really important because it would be all about getting Milim a turn essentially, right? So here we can skill 3 freely with Ricky. So Peira is pretty nice into Politis, is the conclusion of that. Now we have attack buff. We have Aureus, right, for the RB, so don't have to worry about him so much. I debate about, I guess I'm just going to Soulburn here just to kill him, and this will take away one of his revives. So I know I can freely tank a skill 3 while I have Aureus, but my Aureus effect is going to fall off because Politis did hit the Peira and give her, reduce the duration of her buffs, right? So that escort buff that gives the Aureus effect only has one more turn. So that's game. Okay, so we have first pick. We can take Peira here just to test her out. As I mentioned, I think she could be pretty decent as a first pick depending on your roster, since she can flex into both cleave and standard. She provides that Aureus mitigation, right? So it's a fairly common strategy to take mitigation early. She's also a speed contest, so that seems good. The opponent takes Politis and Rand, so it's pretty obvious that they're cleaving at this point, right out the gate. It's really uncommon for somebody to take Politis this early and not cleave. And they have Rand, who's a cleave hero, and they've pre-banned Bellion, which is a common pre-ban for cleavers. So we can take Lilius and then Apoc Ravi. Lilius is good here because she's another speed contest, so I have 2 now. And then Apoc is obviously really strong against cleave because she's really hard to burst down. She can self-sustain and revive your units, etc. She's just a big threat, difficult for them to deal with. So the opponent takes Summertime Iseria and Pavel, which are 2 interesting picks. I haven't seen Pavel in a while. The Summertime Iseria, is pretty obvious to go with the Rand and the Politis, but I don't know how good Pavel is here because I feel like we've kind of established the speed lead at this point since we have 2 speed contests, And I don't think Pavel's base speed is good enough to really compete, with like Peira and stuff. So I'm going to take FCC. This is the second layer of mitigation. So if he bans out Peira, I still have Aureus. And then that means that Pavel probably won't be able to do enough damage. And then we'll take Sage Ball because he's kind of similar to Aravi. He's like one of those sticky threats that's hard for Cleave to deal with. And at this point, we're probably going to ban the Ran because we don't want to get outsped. And I assume, I guess he could ban, I don't know. I don't think there's a good ban for him. If I were him, I would probably ban FCC and then hope to outspeed my Peira, and then I wouldn't have mitigation and I'd get blown up. That would probably be my game plan. So we're going to ban the Ran out. I don't think Cdom really matters here. Remember, Peira has Restrict too, so kind of OP. I don't think I would, if somebody first picked Peira, I don't think I would just try to like instantly go into Cleave. That doesn't seem like a good idea. So the opponent thinks and ends up banning Conquer Lilius. So we get Peira, who has a faster base speed. I guess, yeah. I guess that's their plan. Just pray that they outspeed the Peira. Okay, so we get the first turn. We're able to put restricts on most of the enemy team. We don't get it on the Pavel, but that's all right. And now we can put up our Aureus effect. Doesn't really matter, here if we trigger Politis. Not a big deal. We have APOC and Sage Ball. So, the fact that we have still some residual FCC barrier plus, the increased Aureus from Peira means this is pretty much over. You can see there's just like almost no damage. And at this point, it doesn't really matter what he does because I don't think he can even kill one of the heroes, but he has to kill both APOC and Sage, both of whom are tanky. He goes on FCC. I don't think I would have gone on that target. I think you just have to like pray that you can kill the Ball or something. I'm not sure. But Ball takes a turn, and we get to sleep his team. So he lands some sleeps. He tries to put a bomb on APOC. She gets Crimson seeded, so that uses up one of his books. Goes again, and I guess didn't have a maxed artifact, so didn't get it. But even if he got the bomb there, I don't think it would matter. Okay, that's game. Alrighty, in this game, Bellion and Conquer Lilius are pre-banned. I take APOC Ravi. I don't remember what this person does. I feel like they kind of try to cleave, or at least kind of speed contest a bit. So I think APOC is still a okay first pick in some scenarios if you're not really sure what the opponent's going to do. So he takes Mediator Cowrick. Hovers the Amelia. I don't think that would be a good pick. And then takes Peira. So this is an interesting combo. Haven't run into this one yet. I guess Peira offers Aureus mostly, so probably playing standard, using her as, kind of a contest to discourage me from going speed, and then, having Cowrick for buffs and Peira for, debuffs and the Aureus effect. So I'll take Ran. I don't want to just give up first turn here, so I think taking Ran is fine. And I could take Summertime Iseria. I kind of don't want to tip my hand that early, so I think just taking Stenny here is fine. Yeah, I think Stenny's okay. I debated about Politis also, but I think just taking Stenny here is fine, and then seeing what he does, and then if Iseria is still a good pick. We can go her at that point. I think the concern is if you take Summertime Iseria here, I feel like they just go full casino, with like Rem Violet and all that nonsense, and that's pretty terrible. So taking the Stenny, I think, discourages it a bit and leaves me open. Okay, so he takes Landy. That's kind of an interesting pick. I guess he doesn't want me to go Landy. Landy into Cowrick is pretty good. But AOL's still on the field, so I guess I wouldn't be taking Landy, and he takes AOL. So here I think Politis is an easy pickup, right? Because Politis is going to help counter AOL. It'll help pop Landy out of stealth, with AoE abilities. So I think that's pretty valuable. Another nice thing with Politis is that if we take Summertime Iseria, she can be a trigger for that. So I think these are two strong picks here. And we can probably just plan to ban on last. If it's irrelevant, then we would ban Peira. But here with a Kisei, I don't think I can let that through because I think he's going to ban Ran. And if he bans Ran, then Kisei probably deletes my team. So I guess the thing I'm concerned about here is I think I have to ban Kisei, but the problem is if he restricts like Politis won't be able to take a turn, and that could be awkward. But I think we will get Landy knocked out of stealth, and then if my Summertime Iseria can get a turn, I can probably just kill her. All we really have to do to win this match is kill Landy. So what's interesting here, the skill 2 on Peira is the thing that puts restrict, and that's an attack. So he can do that for free and not trigger anything on my end. But if he skill 3s to put up the Aureus effect, he will trigger Politis. And right now, my Summertime Iseria is ahead of his Cowrick, I believe. I think. Yeah, I think it's right behind AOL. So that's a problem for him since even if Cowrick goes, my Summertime is ahead of Landy, so it doesn't really matter because Landy won't re-stealth. He could, because see here, Politis is going to skill 2, and this will knock Landy out of stealth. I'm just going through the different scenarios in my head. This will put bombs up. I don't get the CR boost except for a Ravi. But yeah, my Summertime Iseria is squarely ahead of the Cowrick. But let's say for a moment that Cowrick actually goes before my Summertime Iseria. I don't think it matters because Landy is out of stealth. And I could, theoretically, I have 4 souls here. I could burn Summertime Iseria quite a bit and strip off the buffs, because he'll have attack buff and immunity and then skill null, and I think the damage would strip the skill null, and then I think the first activation would just completely take everything off. I could be wrong. It could maybe only take 2. Either way, I think we win. So that's game. Okay, I have first pick. I'm going to take Peira. Conquer Lilius is pre-banned. I played some more games now. I think that I would probably still prefer taking Conquer Lilius over Peira. I think you need a fast enough Lilius to do that, though. If you don't have a very fast Lilius, so like above 300, at least for the Legend bracket, you may not be able to get away with that. Things are becoming more and more about speed. And what's kind of interesting is you have these 3 like pretty high base speed, pretty powerful units with Peira, Lilius, and Ran. And a conundrum I haven't found a way out of yet is if you take one of them and then the opponent takes the other 2, it can put you in an awkward spot. And I think that's why taking Lilius is generally a pretty good idea if you're first pick, since if you take Ran or Peira first, they can take Lilius and the other one, because Lilius pairs well with both. But I don't think like Ran and Peira play super well together. In like the right context, they might be okay if your Ran is on damage. But generally speaking, I think you're just not going to do enough if you pick both on your team. So I think that's why if you're first pick, you really need to take Lilius. to prevent the opponent from taking Lilius plus the other one, if that makes sense. So here I've taken Peira first, and he went Politis FCC, which is kind of slow. So I take APOC and Cowrick. I want to like just try flexing into, I guess, a more standard thing. But then he takes Landy and Stenny. So this is a pretty slow start. I'm just going to try to go big. Since he hasn't really picked anything that can speed contest me at this point. I'm just going to take Opsig and then Summertime Iceria and try to blow him up. And this is like what seems really interesting to me with this meta is it feels like you get all of these like individual combos, right? And it really like creates flexible, interesting drafts because you can go from like playing standard to all of a sudden I'm cleaving, right? In the last 2 picks, it's like surprise. And you always have to keep in mind that your opponent can do that when you're playing against them and kind of weighing your options, you know, in terms of your picks and like what you're going to do against them. So I feel like drafting has gotten pretty complicated, you know, and it's fun to go through. So here he takes Rimuru last. I think my ban is either Rimuru or Politis. They're both kind of annoying. Politis could be on Crown. Rimuru will probably cut for sure if I miss restrict and stuff. So I'm just going to ban him out. Yeah, I think Rimuru is fine as a ban. Politis is probably squishier too. I think my concern here was that, like, I could have banned the Politis, right? And I could have taken Peira, and if I had put attack buff on Opsig, I could go for the kill. But people are running like ridiculously degen Rimurus, and I was afraid I wouldn't be able to kill it. And then I think that would put me in a bad spot, since if I tried to kill the Landy, for example, with Peira, then, or I mean with Opsig, then it would trigger Rimuru skill too, and it could get ugly since my Opsig would just pop. So here we get lucky and we strip the Landy, so that's good. And I feel like I have a win here if I just skill 1. If I skill, I should have, I guess, gone for the stun on Politis, actually. Probably better, because then that would have prevented the skill 2 if I use Cowrick. So that was bad. I should have tried to stun the Poly instead. Doesn't really matter. We killed the Landy, and now we can skill 3 with Opsig. So this will do a good amount of damage and push back. Unfortunately, we didn't have attack buff on her, but I think it's fine. Really just the opponent's Stenny at this point, but they all have buff block on them, so they can't get skill null and they can't get barriers from FCC. We can put attack down on the Politis, and I think that's the play here, just to like minimize the opponent's ability to do damage. We have a cleanse from Ricky next, and we can hopefully just take out Politis before he goes, and then we just completely deny the S2. Having a little bit of bulk on Peira is nice, just because she's able to survive, you know, attacks like that. And even if she dies here, like, we can just res her with APOC, so it doesn't really matter. That's a lot of crown stuns. Alright, we go here, and now we can just skill 3 for free, even if Peira manages to die, which I don't think she will, because she's a little, you know, just under half. APOC would definitely res her, right? So not a huge deal. We have plenty of immunity from Cowrick to prevent the annoying crown stuns. He goes again on Peira, but misses. So we can just finish off Politis here. So she's down, and now we can skill 3 with Peira for free. I didn't really talk about her artifacts much. Her artifact, you know, is going to reduce her skill cooldowns and help her turn cycle and give her effectiveness, so I think it's a really strong choice on her. I think your other options, you could run RNL to try to get cheesy stuns. I don't really love that idea, since I think you'd cycle out of her buffs sometimes, and I think that could be really bad. You know, it's unpredictable. I think another decent option might actually be Oath Key, because if you think about a lot of times, if you're playing her in a standard role, you're bringing her for the buff strip and the Aureus, right? And having Oath Key helps her hit green units like Rimuru. So I think Oath Key is going to be a strong option. I think her artifact is nice for kind of more aggressive teams, where you're just trying to like cycle through her turns and stuff. Gonna have to play with her more. It may not even really matter, I guess, if you actually, maybe her artifact is better for longer games, because then you get to cycle through her thing. If you're playing aggressive, you might just kill them in the first rotation. Something to think about. So let me know in the comments below if you were able to pull her. I think she's a must pull, by the way. So if you want to grab her, now's the time. Thanks for watching. Later.